back. Welcome to the video. If you didn't read the title before clicking, why didn't you? All jokes aside, if you didn't read the title, today we're talking about why people get fat when bulking instead of actually being able to properly bulk. Now, the reason why I chose such a subject is because obviously I want my channel to be for people around my age, or people around my age, just so they can kind of relate with what I'm saying, I guess, and so they can relate to what I have been struggling with. Obviously, a 65-year-old isn't going to care about bulking and cutting, and probably neither is a 40-year-old, right? Actually, a 40-year-old might, but regardless, the point is, like, when it comes to being young, and when I say young, I mean from 14 to 28, or 14 to 25, or whatever, right? This is where you really care more about your physique, I feel like. And obviously, I'm not exempting like 25 plus, or even kids. Like, I started getting more into fitness by the time I was like, 12, 13, doing home workouts and stuff like that. I still remember having like a 10-pound dumbbell. I remember buying a 10-pound dumbbell from Goodwill, begging my father to go with me just so I could get a 10-pound dumbbell, a pair of them, and that was my whole home gym setup pretty much. And I did everything I could with those dumbbells. And anyways, regardless, I remember back then, even holding that 10-pound dumbbell up was very difficult. And now it's like, obviously a 10-pound dumbbell feels like it weighs nothing. So it's like a pretty cool story for you if you care, I guess. But anyways, people around our age especially want to get into the gym or just lose some fat. Oftentimes most people, their physiques aren't just where they want to be, so they want to bulk, right? Most of the time, especially guys, they want to put on some mass quick. They're just very small, they feel like, even if they're skinny fat, some of them, right? The mass opinion of the people will want to bulk just because they've been told that when you bulk, that's when you make the most gains and you're just huge and jacked, and then you can just strip off all the fat and you're good to go for building from that point onwards. Now, that is like the basis of what the normal understanding of bulking is. But there is a large issue at hand that we got to address, and the issue is people get fat as fuck when bulking, right? I mean, if you've heard of dirty bulking, just eating a bunch of crap just to overload your calories as much as possible and gaining a lot of excess fat along with the muscle. Now, the concept of dirty bulking can lead someone to dirty bulk, but other people might just dirty bulk on accident. Bulking isn't something that's like, once you gain a lot of fat, it isn't so easy to just strip it off like that, and you would want to avoid as much fat gain as possible. I don't know if you know this or not, but fat cells, they don't disappear when you lose fat. They just minimize and shrink down, right? Now, which means you will always have those fat cells on your body. Now, this isn't that big a deal because who cares if the fat cells are on your body if you look fine, right? But regardless, it's like, it isn't worth getting fat while bulking, because there is a different alternative. And the alternative is to get the maximal muscle gains without having to bulk and get fat out of it, right? Apologies for the highway noise. I know there's going to be a lot because I can hear it. I want to get a microphone as soon as possible. I mentioned this in a previous video, but I haven't gotten to it yet, so sorry about that, but that's besides the point. So sorry about that. Now, in this video, I'm going to be going through reasons why you're not getting fat, and then I'll match it with a reason why you shouldn't get fat through bulking, right? The correct way to do it. So I'll tell you the wrong way to do it, and then I'll immediately correct you with the right way to do it. and hopefully by the end of this video, you will know the ins and outs about how to bulk without getting fat. All right, so the number one mistake people do, not in any crazy particular order, but the worst mistake people do is overshooting their calorie limit. Nowadays, pretty much everyone has heard of a calorie surplus and a calorie deficit, but when people hear they want to bulk, they set their surplus to 1,000 or maybe even 500, 700 calories above maintenance. And this may not be on purpose, you know, it may be on accident, but regardless, a lot of people do this. And when you do this, you are not just bulking. This is what the dirty bulk is, right? And when you do this, you're gonna gain way more fat than muscle for absolutely no reason. Excess fat that doesn't need to be there, that won't aid in muscle growth, is gonna be added to your body that you're gonna have to waste months to take off without any muscle gain during that time. For what? Right? For nothing. So it's completely useless. You definitely don't want to be doing that. Now, what you actually want to do is do almost what you'd want to call a main gain or a gain-tain or a recomp, some people like to call it. But what you'd want to do is eat in a slight calorie surplus of about 200 to 300 calories or so. Now, once you do this, your body will have enough energy, right? Now, what a surplus is you need a certain amount of calories to maintain your current body weight, to maintain the muscle you have, maintain the actions that you take on partake in on an average day. It's all calculated. Your body does the calculations, and it comes up with a certain number. Let's say 3,000, just to throw it out there for an average guy. If you eat 300 calories below this, you're going to lose that much worth of weight, right? And 3,500 calories leads to a pound of fat, for just for reference. So you can kind of use that as reference, but that's how much weight you will lose. On the flip side, if you eat in a 300 calorie surplus, that's how much weight you will gain. Now, obviously, when you're taking into account basal metabolic heart rate, resting metabolic heart rate, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which just means when you're performing day-to-day tasks without actual performance of exercises being completed, that number is going to stray around a little bit. But let's just not take those into account for a second, and let's say you eat in a 300 calorie surplus, right? What this is going to do is absolutely minimize your fat gain. You will gain pretty much no fat, and the reason why is because it'll balance out. Of course, you're meant to gain a little bit of fat when you're in a surplus, but when your nutrition needs are met, right, and when you're gaining muscle, that muscle will make up for the amount of fat that you'll gain from that calorie surplus through burning it through your resting metabolism. 200 to 300 calories worth of food is absolutely negligible, and it's something where you can just be like, okay, you're not going to gain fat from it as long as your diet is good. That is not something that is going to happen, and that's not something you got to worry about, really. Obviously, like, you might think you'll gain fat, you might gain a little bit of fat, but trust me, it'll be very negligible, and if anything, it may just be an opportunity for you to gain even more muscle due to that slight surplus. Your muscle is maximized when you're at that surplus or when your energy needs are met. But when you're in the gym and exercising and having to feed your muscles, you're going to need a little bit more to push yourself above. And if you're just eating at maintenance, you might actually be eating at a deficit just because you're not, taking account that exercise you're putting in and the muscle that you're building, right? So eating in a little bit of that surplus gives you that perfect almost maintenance where your body is absolutely maximized for muscle gain and hypertrophy and all that, and it's fully energized, but there's no excess, so you're not getting excess fat, and it's all just equalized balance, and you're gaining a perfect amount of muscle. Bro, this is risky, man. Being stuck in like slow/fast moving traffic. Our number 2 big mistake people make is not tracking your calorie intake or just your food intake. This doesn't mean you have to track every single piece of food, but a lot of times people are like, okay, I'm gonna be eating big, and then they just eat a bunch of crap, and it's not actual nutritious stuff. And when you're eating big without actually measuring, you don't know if that is actually gonna convert to muscle. You're not taking account the protein. Let's say you eat a whole large ass pizza, right, thinking this is gonna aid you in muscle, but you know, this might have been a bad example because pizza has a lot of cheese, which has a lot of, you know, let's say you're eating a large bag of fries, right, or a large fry or something, and you might think, oh, I'm in surplus, I'm eating all this food, you know, but if you eat a bunch of, if your calorie surplus is from fries, which have virtually no, you know, efficient protein, you're not going to gain any muscle, and you're definitely not going to gain any muscle, and you might even lose muscle because of this. Now, why? Is because if you don't have enough protein intake, your body is going to go into starvation mode. I'm going to get a little bit into this later as well, potentially, but what that pretty much means is your body will look for the protein that it needs in your red muscle, and it can't get the protein from lipids, and it can't get it from carbohydrates, so it'll go to your muscle as its source of nutrient protein that it needs, that you're not feeding it, and it will start to eat away your muscles, and the calories you're eating will just be converted to fat instead, right? They'll turn into fat. They're not going to become muscle, because protein is what builds that muscle. You're not going to build a bunch of muscle by eating potatoes and, you know, carbs or fats, right? The solution to this is just to track. It's simple as that. And like I said, you don't have to be super, you know, extreme about it. You can just track very loosely. You can use apps such as MyFitnessPal or similar ones. I'm sure there are a bunch out there. And you don't even have to use it continuously. If you're a little bit more dedicated and you want to get into this, you can, you know, MyFitnessPal has an option where you can just kind of scan the barcode of something and know all of its macros, or type in the name and know all of its macros. You can input it into your diary and track your calories and everything that way, macro and micronutrients. Even if not that, just loosely, you should know your protein, carbohydrate, fat, overall calorie, macronutrient numbers of maintenance. So you can know kind of loosely, okay, if I look back today, having knowledge of my maintenance macronutrients, did I overeat, undereat, where do you think I am, just so I can kind of have a vision of it. If you're totally blind to this stuff, it's easy to kind of make assumption like, oh, I didn't really eat shit today, and then make yourself feel worse, or when maybe you did eat good, or some people might be like, oh, I ate a lot today, I'll gain a lot of muscle, but then you track it and you realize you ate a bunch of fat and carbs and like 20 grams of protein or 40 grams of protein. You're just going to get skinny fat and your muscle is going to go away. All right, so that's how that works. You want to be able to at least loosely track it so you have some sort of inkling in your mind, even if it's just to be like, oh shit, like, oh, what's this guy doing? Even if it's just to have some sort of accountability system where you kind of at the end of the day know like, oh shit, like I really didn't eat enough, so you know, you feel a little bit worse, and maybe the next day you'll be like, I don't want to feel that again, so I'm gonna actually eat better protein, right? Now, the third reason for why people are getting fat in their bulk is because they're not prioritizing protein. And this is kind of what I was talking about in the last point. But the last point was just more about tracking food in general, how tracking helps you. But protein itself is very important. And even if you're tracking food, you got to understand the importance of protein just so you can really hone in on it. If you don't know the importance of protein, and you're tracking all your macros, if you don't know, what numbers for protein is good or bad, and how much it affects your muscle growth, you might just be like, oh, you might just kind of brush over it and think it's not that big a deal, when it is. You may eat a bunch of junk and not enough lean protein. Always remember, protein builds muscle, and extra carbs and fat do not at all whatsoever. Now, if you have good healthy fats in you and healthy complex carbs that are slowly fueling you, obviously indirectly this is going to lead to better hormones, mental health, performance, and therefore muscle. But prioritizing protein first as the main thing has to be on your the top of your list of priorities. Protein is first. So when you're eating in a day and when you're tracking and anything you're doing, always prioritize protein. You want about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. This isn't exactly exact, but if you're like 100 pounds or so, get 100 pounds of protein, 100 grams of protein, sorry. If you're like 150 pounds, get 120 grams of protein to 150. If you're 200 pounds, you know, you probably don't need 200 grams of protein. And if you're anything above 200 pounds, like realistically, you'll probably be all right with, you know, 160 grams of protein, 180 grams of protein max. You don't need too much more. You don't need, like, you know, if you're 300 pounds, you don't need 300 grams of protein. Chances are you're not 300 pounds of lean mass. But regardless, you want about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. The rest of your diet you can just fill in with healthy fats and carbs. All right, so this video has gone on long, and I've gone through the more important subjects, I imagine. So the rest of the video is gonna be a little bit shorter, a little bit more sped up, rather. So just a little disclaimer. Number 4, no training progression. You always got to remember, food is the fuel for your performance, and if you're eating optimal food, you should be wanting to perform optimally. If you're half-assing it at the gym and your routine's not good, and you know everything's all over the place, but your diet is great, which is rare. You know, most people get their gym stuff figured out before their diet. Diet is usually the harder part. But regardless, if you are one of these people that are struggling, just remember, you know, you want to be able to grow. You want to be able to progressively overload continuously as you're, you know, as you have this good diet and good protein in. That's kind of the reason why you're doing this diet, so you can improve. So make sure you are improving and make sure you're putting in effort to do that. Train with progressive overload. Remember that your lifts are always progressive overload prioritizing. You should be performance driven and not appetite driven. And also remember to track your lifts, track your weights every single week, track your sets, make sure you're always progressively overloading. All right, number 5 reason, poor sleep and recovery. If you are gonna have poor sleep and poor recovery, recovery obviously comes from diet as well, but sleep is very important. And if you aren't sleeping well, you're not, even if your performance and your diet is great, you're not giving your body the time and the ability to utilize all this hard work you're putting in the most efficient way at all. Lack of quality sleep and recovery slows down your protein metabolism, and it will oftentimes just increase the likely chance of you gaining fat. When it comes to the diet, you want to usually use a 80-20 rule, where 80% of your stuff should be whole foods, should be rice, potatoes, lean meats, sweet potatoes, oats, vegetables, etc. And then the 20% can be junk, like fast food, chips here and there. You know, you don't have to be so strict unless you want to speed up your progress that much more. You know, don't just think that if you do 90-10 instead of 80-20 that you'll get only 10% more gains. If anything, any percentages that are raised from the 80-20 rule closer to the, you know, 99-1 or 100-0 will exponentially increase your growth. Ideally, you want about a quarter pound to half a pound of weight gain per week. This kind of ensures that you're not getting too much fat, and what you are gaining is significantly more muscle. If you're gaining too fast, just decrease the calories, and if you're gaining too slow, then increase it by 100 to 200. And of course, you probably expected this to come earlier in the video, but cardio is very important. Cardio can help you lose fat in so many different ways, but you know, I can speak about that in another video. Cardio is very important. You should always do cardio, but you should aim for about 1 to 2 intense sessions per week. If not, about 180 minutes of moderate cardio per week is still very good. Hope you enjoyed the video. I don't really got much to say. I gotta head into work now, so peace.